everyone, this is Juliet Stinson, and this is my individual project wrap-up, reflection, and next steps. So for my individual project, I selected the task of trying to downsize and organize our second room in our apartment that we have dubbed the music room. And my project was to create a comfortable, organized, and functional space that allows for the necessary activities that need to be performed in that room. So this was what the room started off looking like. And as you can see, it was a pile of chaos. We store everything in this room that doesn't have a place in the apartment. Things from like luggage, holiday decorations, childhood memorabilia, photographs, vintage lamps, clothes and shoes that we can't fit or aren't wearing anymore. But we also have huge things like the piano and a ton of musical instruments and a desk with our backup computer that we don't really use anymore except to do recording occasionally, musical recording. So this is what we were starting off with. And so when I went to begin trying to figure out how to organize the tasks to reach my goals, I decided to use the functional analysis approach to analyze this and then come up with my deliverables and work breakdown structure. So first of all, I created a list for the expectations for the room and how it would be used. So I generated all the activities that we would want to be using this room for, and then I used that to create 6 main functions or categories, types of activities that we would be needing to be using that room for, and that room would need to allow enough space and organization for those activities to happen. So using those 6 main functions, I used that to generate my project deliverables, and then I created my categories for my work breakdown structure, and then I used it to organize my project activities. So in a couple slides, you'll see how I organized my project activities based off of these 6 main functions. So for my project deliverables, I have that we wanted to have a recording corner, so a space for all of the equipment to exist but also be set up for recording music. Long-term storage, this would be stuff like holiday decorations, luggage, things that you pull out a couple times a year, or things that you don't pull out hardly ever, like photos, childhood memorabilia, things like that. Then we have our bunny corner, where we have a free roaming bunny, but he has to have his space for his litter box, his food, and his hay and stuff like that. Instrument corner, we have a lot of instruments besides just the piano, so we need space for those and like a good organization system. And then we have Legos, that not just the assembled sets, but the boxes and instruction manuals and things like that that go along with them, that we would need to have a good way to not just display the sets, but also store the extra things that go along with Legos in an organized way. And then a gaming storage area. So this is just space to organize and maybe display the different types of games that we have. We have a lot of D&D manuals and minis and Magic the Gathering cards, stuff like that. So I thought this would be a cool thing to have like a little display area for it, but also have it nicely organized and together in a like certain area in the room. So this was my work breakdown. I categorized each of the little sections, and then I did a breakdown of what would be included in that area. So things I would need to address, make sure that I was accounting for those items, like providing not just space for them, but a way to organize them, and also make the things that need to be accessible. So here was my timeline. I broke it down by week, and then I have the tasks associated with that week, and then what my milestones would be. So the first couple weeks were just planning, and then I just did pretty much 2 sections per week after that was the goal or the plan for the milestones for those. So originally I was going to create piles of everything in the room and designate whether it was going to be trash, donated, or keep, so that the goal at the end of week 3 was that the only thing that would be remaining in the room would be items that we were keeping and that would then need to be organized and put into their designated locations, so that the next week I just did 2 sections, and then the next week after that, the next 2 sections. So it was supposed to be that it would be pretty quick to organize those sections because everything in the room had been narrowed down to only the things we were keeping, and the trash stuff was going to be thrown away and all the donate stuff would be taken to the road home. So that was the initial plan. I created this spreadsheet just to organize my categories. The categories were just sections of the room, and then my activities that were just associated with each section. This goes on for 3 pages, so we'll just look really quickly at one of these pages. So I have like for an activity, so sort my items into keep, donate, trash piles, and then the status of whether they were completed, and then if there were any changes or updates to what my original plan was. Something that I didn't plan for was that we would run into things that we wanted to sell. So I hadn't planned on creating a sale pile, but the further I got into organizing it, the more we had more items come up that they weren't just donate or throw away, and we're like, oh, okay, well, maybe we should try and sell these things. So that stack kept getting bigger, so then I had to accommodate and have a stack in the room that everything in the room wasn't just keep stack. Then there became like a section for sale stack. And then some of the steps where they didn't get completed, I have like next steps, or if like additional things needed to happen down the road for those. So like for the long-term storage here, I have, this was a milestone completed. The long-term storage area was set up. And then the next steps would be that we need to photograph and list the for sale items that were taken out of this section that we ended up with after we sorted everything from the closet. And this happened with several of the different areas where we came up with for sale items that we needed to photograph and list them. There were a couple of other things that needed to be added. Oops, sorry, we're scrolling too far. Like for example, something really small that just didn't get finished was like the donation pile didn't make it to the road home. It's in the car and piled up in there. They just haven't been dropped off yet. So there were a couple different changes to my project plan from what I originally had. The for sale piles, like I mentioned, we had instruments, shoes, clothes, camera, photography equipment, our backup computer. We've decided we can do all of our music recording on a laptop, and we can get rid of, it's a pretty big desktop computer. So we've decided we want to sell that. Another thing was that the memorabilia and paper, like photographs and things like that, for long-term storage didn't end up getting fully sorted. Some of them got started, but it just wasn't feasible, like especially not for 90% of it for David's as well, where it was just not reasonable for us to like be able to finish this within this time frame. It was a lot bigger of a project than I thought it would be. So all those ended up getting boxed up and organized, which was really nice that they all fit in the top shelf of this closet, and they're all pretty well organized and sorted, and they have their own section, but they're just not as downsized as I had hoped that they would have been at the end of this project. The bunny corner wasn't really moved, so he didn't get a corner in the room. He ended up, his little cage where he's got his litter and food dishes and stuff like that are still in the closet, so it's not ideal. And I actually would like to, going forward, move it to a different location in the house. But that was kind of outside the scope of this project. So he ended up just staying there. So, and then the gaming area in the room, this section did not actually end up being created at all. It is moved to the hallway bookcase. We had like a couple empty shelves where I moved all of our minis and D&D books and Magic the Gathering cards and stuff like that. I put all of them on some shelves in the hallway. So there's no display area, And it's not what I had originally intended for there to be like a little section for this. Ideally, this would be something that would get to be incorporated in the room if we could create like a little shelving unit in there where some of the shelves could store the books and some of them could have like the minis on display. So this is what the current state of the music room looks like, and I was really happy with the finished product. And David was really happy and surprised too, because I made him not look at it for a couple weeks, so there was a big reveal moment. As you can see, obviously there's a ton more room, and that's our dog Darwin laying down in it. And I do have the section set up where we have the recording area here on the desk. We've got the instruments over here. The instruments kind of flood over all the way around, and hopefully when we do some of the for sale instruments, this area will be downsized. And then these Tupperwares here, this is my stack of for sale stuff. So this stuff is hopefully going to be moved out sometime in the near future. But yeah, so that's temporary. And these are the little Legos that didn't end up getting put on the display shelf. They're right now just being displayed on the piano, which isn't what we want to do long term with those. But turned out pretty great. Is a movable, usable space now. So lessons learned. Timelines will change. Everything will take longer than you think. At least in my case it did. So I just needed to remember to learn as I go, and I needed to adjust the timeline frequently so I didn't miss the deadline. Because things were taking longer than I planned. I should have been looking forward and adjusting the timeline more frequently and making sure that because of the changes that were happening to my plan, that the next steps were being accommodated for and that I was like allowing for those changes to happen. Short iterations fail quickly. In the first week or two of executing this, I tried to approach it where I was doing everything in the room sorted into keep, trash, donate piles, and then start organizing the corners. And that was just crazy because there was no space in the room whatsoever to move around. It was impossible to organize it like that. And so trying to set up really like follow those outlines of what I had planned, it took me 2 weeks to learn something that I should have just tried it really quick in a day or two. And if it wasn't working, give up and try something else, or like, learn quickly. So, and that kind of goes along with the next one. If approach isn't working, try something new, and don't be afraid to scrap parts of the project or the whole thing and start over. So there were parts that didn't get incorporated, like the game corner or the rabbit corner. He's still in the closet. Well, his cage is. You guys don't worry, he's not locked in the closet. But it really was something that I wanted to stick to my plan at first. And when it wasn't working very well, I felt like I needed to keep forcing it to work. And it wasn't until like, I was like, okay, just don't be afraid to abandon the plan and start over. And what is actually going to work? Try that out, try little iterations. And then if something starts working, go with that and try a new approach. Like doing the piles didn't work, so I changed direction, and instead of sorting everything in the whole room, I just started sorting little sections better, and where it was just like, okay, now I'm only sorting everything on the top of the closet. I cleared everything on the top shelf of the closet, and I only put things back up there that I wanted to be in that section, and I made sure that section was organized before I moved on to the next section, so that way I could break it down into smaller sections. And then I kind of had to give up on some of the little things like having a gaming corner because it just didn't fit in the room. And just those shelves in the bookcase in the hallway is just a practical way that it fits currently. So that's just going to work for now. So don't be surprised was the last one. There will always be unknowables. So assess risks and make sure your plan has flexibility to adjust for these. I think that I needed to make sure that I was going in and readjusting my plan more frequently, and also allowing for more flexibility in my plan where I had it so thoroughly planned out at the very beginning where I had so many steps worked out and I had done like a ton of, okay, this is how I'm approaching it, this is how I'm going to organize everything. And it was more of like a waterfall approach than a SAM, where I was doing a lot of thorough research at the beginning. And then by the time I executed it, things just happened where I didn't have like the storage boxes that I needed, or David didn't have time to organize his section. So it was like I needed to be able to adjust to those things and figure out a way to move on with the project regardless. So I just need to have more flexibility in my plan and make sure I was continually going back to it and like making sure it was updated and would fall in line with what was currently happening and updating the deadline too. So next steps for this. So I realized that we needed storage containers for our memorabilia and papers. They're in most of it's in cardboard boxes right now, and several of them have holes chewed in them from the rabbit. So we need to make sure that I get long-term storage boxes that will work for our pets so they won't break into it, and so that way I'm not limited to only putting the boxes on the top shelf of the closet so that they're out of reach from the rabbit because he'll chew them. And obviously, like, old photographs and journals from your childhood, you don't want the rabbit chewing into those. So I need to get long-term storage containers that will work long-term for items like that. For sale items, so this new category that popped up that I didn't plan for, all these items need to be photographed and then listed on eBay and Craigslist. I've already started setting up a photo corner where I have a backdrop set up. We already have some photography equipment, which we will be selling too, but in the meantime, I'm going to use it to list all the items. So I've got some like lights and like filters and stuff like that to set up around it. So that's already started to be set up, and we already have eBay and Craigslist and KSL accounts. So we'll be listing those things. Then we need to hang the shelf above the piano for displaying the Legos. Right now they're just propped up on the piano, and that's not going to work long term for playing the piano, but also recording the piano where you have to pop open the top of the piano. And then last thing was to find and organize the location for the bunnies corner, since it didn't really fit in the room like I was hoping. And I ran into this, that a lot of the things to finish organizing that room, I needed to organize the rest of the house. But since that was kind of outside the scope of what I was trying to focus on for this project, I realized that I wanted to put Arthur's little dishes and litter box out in the living room, but the living room wasn't fully organized and ready to accommodate all that stuff. So I need to, going forward, organize the living room or potentially our bedroom to provide a space for that stuff for his, so we can move him out of that closet, and that would actually free up more space in the closet for long-term storage. And I think, yep, that is everything I've got for this project. It was pretty interesting. It had a lot of hiccups, a lot of things I didn't plan for. And there are several things going forward that it still need to be completed, but the state that it's at right now is definitely usable for almost all of the deliverables that I had other than the gaming corner. And it was overall pretty successful despite having so many surprising turns. And that's it. Thanks so much for listening.